Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kevin, and we are inside China. It is very difficult to get Republicans and Democrats in the United States to agree on anything. So imagine there's an issue where the Republicans and Democrats in Washington, along with all of Europe and even India, all agree on something. And there is. And the issue is that the world is far too dependent on drugs from China. They've been saying so since 2000, since the early days of the pandemic, when we discovered that for many life-saving drugs and treatments, China supplies all of them. Not just a majority, mind you, but 100% of them. And there was bipartisan consensus in Washington and in other countries around the world that these are national security issues and that something had to be done. Fast forward to today, 2024, and we are moving instead in the opposite direction. China is now firmly entrenched in new markets and in new drugs that they weren't in previously. But even more important than that is that last year, 2023, the FDA purchased from a Chinese company a drug that had not been approved for use or sale in the United States. I'll say this again for emphasis. The American Food and Drug Administration, FDA, was faced with the critical shortage of a certain cancer drug. The only company in the world that made a drug that was similar was a Chinese company, but it had not yet been approved for use in the United States, and the US FDA bought it anyway. This is going to be a model going forward for a lot of other drugs and from a lot of other companies. The FDA regulates the American drug market very tightly, and it is very difficult to get a drug approved for sale in the United States. It's a very long and expensive process. On average, it takes between 12 and 15 years, and the median cost to a company is around $1 billion. And some experts say it's even higher than that. So the barriers to entry here are very high. Only very, very wealthy companies can afford to introduce a new drug into the United States. And because the upfront costs are so high, after you get approved, it's basically a license to print money. They're able to charge a very high price after that to get their investment back. It's a long time before they can even approach break even based on the upfront investment. But the US market is such that you can charge those very high prices for a set number of many years. So we can think of the FDA in the United States as a gatekeeper, and it's very expensive to get in the door. China has announced its intention to be the premier manufacturer of pharmaceuticals to the whole world. And their strategy in drugs is the same as for everything else, for every other industry they're in. They're going to focus on monopolizing the very top of the supply chains and then work their way down. Eventually, consumers have to choose between buying from China or doing without. Whether it's electric cars or solar panels or plastics or chemicals or toys or anything we buy in Walmart or anything we buy on Amazon.com, now they're doing the same thing in the drug business. In pharmaceuticals, China is building monopolies in what's called APIs. APIs are active pharmaceutical ingredients, and these are the parts of a drug that causes the drug to work, the things that brings about the desired effect. For example, in an anti-cancer drug, the API is what causes the cancers to shrink. In an anti-inflammatory, the API causes swelling to go down. And everything else that goes into a pill or a medicine, the color, the shape, the size, the packaging, the other ingredients that make it easier to digest or easier to swallow or easier for the drug to be absorbed into the bloodstream. All those things are added by the branding company later. But the concern in the industry now is that for the APIs, the most important part, China has monopolies on so many of them. The Chinese company is Qilu Pharmaceuticals. Qilu did not need to spend $1 billion getting approved for the drug. They did not need to spend 10 years doing clinical trials for the FDA to get approved to sell the drug. All they had was a similar drug, similar in efficacy and safety profiles, and now they're in the US market. For players in the China pharmaceutical industry, the strategy here becomes pretty obvious. Suppose you have a China drug maker, Company A. He is a Chinese manufacturer of a drug that is functionally the same drug as one made by another company that has been approved for sale and for use in the United States. Let's call those guys Company X, the international company that makes the drug that has been licensed for sale and use in the United States. Now there's a third company, a China company, Company B. Company B makes the APIs, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, for both Company A here in China and Company X, the international company. Wouldn't it be a simple thing just to tell Company B, do not sell APIs in the future to Company X? Then, within a couple of weeks or months at the most, the world is facing a shortage of that drug, and then Company A and B can step forward and say, here it is, give us an emergency use authorization from the FDA, and we'll give you as much as you want. The pharmaceutical industry in the United States is just begging to be reformed. Any way, anyhow, the sooner the better. Everything costs way too much, everything takes way too long, and companies cannot even be in the market at all unless they have $10 billion in the bank. Then, when they finally do get one of their drugs approved, they have to get all those massive upfront investments back, all that time and all that money. So they charge very high prices for a very long time until they do. And this is obviously a lousy system if you're sick, especially if you're sick and you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of time. The summer of 2023 was the start of a trend. Last year it was one company and one drug. Soon enough it'll be many companies and many drugs. And it will be our own FDA, our very own Food and Drug Administration, who will be changing their own rules and their own procedures to allow these drugs to come into the US market. And all those people we mentioned at the very beginning, the Republicans, the Democrats, the regulators from around the world, will they really insist on paying higher prices for fewer drugs? They are elected officials, after all. Is there really a big constituency of people who want longer wait times and higher prices? Production supply chains are everything. If we have them, we can do whatever we want. And if we don't have them, we're at the mercy of people who do. We have to pray now that they're going to be merciful. Thank you for watching our channel. Be good.